today. Let me read it while you get organized. The ninth juror says, the facts are supposed to determine the case. The 10th juror responds, don't give me any of that. I'm sick and tired of facts. You can twist them any way you like. Know what I mean? And a ninth juror says, that's exactly the point this gentleman, the 8th juror, has been making. Why are juries required to render a unanimous decision rather than a majority decision in most criminal cases? To what extent, if any, do jury trials ensure due process as stated in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? To what extent, if any, do jury trials reinforce founding principles? And well, you can start anytime you're ready.
Representative government and trial by jury are the heart and lungs of liberty. John Adams.
Trial by jury in civil cases is as essential to secure the liberty of the people as any one of the pre-existent rights of nature. James Madison.
I consider trial by jury as the only anchor ever yet imagined by man, by which government can be held to the principles of its constitution. Thomas Jefferson.
The concept of a trial by jury dates back to the creation of the Magna Carta in 1215, which stated that English nobles must be protected from punishment except by the lawful judgment of their peers. The jury represents an important aspect of our justice system.
Throughout the course of history, there has been debate over the use of unanimous juries. In the Supreme Court's 1972 ruling in Apodaca versus Oregon, Justice Lewis Powell said that the Sixth Amendment protects the right to a unanimous jury for defendants in federal criminal trials, but not for those in state criminal trials.
Justice Brennan disagreed and in his dissent said, when less than unanimity is sufficient, consideration of minority views may become nothing more than a matter of majority grace. History has proven the wisdom of Justice Brennan's words. Louisiana, one of the only 2 states that allowed for felony convictions without a unanimous jury after Apodaca, had the highest documented wrongful conviction rate in the country.
In 2020, the Supreme Court reversed its opinion. In Ramos versus Louisiana, Justice Neil Gorsuch, writing for the majority, explained that it is unmistakable that when the Sixth Amendment was adopted, the right to a trial by an impartial jury included the right to a unanimous jury.
To indict a suspect, juries must have reasonable belief that a crime was committed. However, this requisite of unanimity ensures that a jury is convicting someone beyond a reasonable doubt, a standard established by In re Winship that is fundamental to the judicial process. Freedom to one's life, liberty, and property are inalienable rights, and it must be made undeniably clear that the defendant has in fact committed the alleged crime to take away these rights.
Unanimous opinions also establish legitimacy. The unanimity of the Supreme Court's landmark school segregation decision of 1954, for instance, is frequently cited as an example of judicial statesmanship. A less clear-cut decision in Brown versus Board of Education may have exacerbated racial tensions in the relevant communities.
John Calhoun once stated that the unanimous jury verdict has proven to be the safest, the wisest, and the best that human ingenuity has ever devised. We agree. The rule ensures vigorous debate in the jury room. Jurors cannot return a verdict until all agree, giving a powerful voice to the minority view, if one exists.
The jury trial is a vital part of America's systems of checks and balances and due process. At the very core is having an impartial jury. It is vital that the jurors are impartial and pass judgment solely based on the evidence provided in the courtroom. While not perfect, the jury selection and voir dire process allow for the establishment of impartiality.
The framers understood that the jury laid at the very foundation of a Republican form of government, that it was essential to the protection of liberty. As Jefferson noted, Article 3 judges might be subject to temptations of bribery or devotion to one of the other branches. The jury is the simple and genius solution to that problem, as it is disconnected from any branch of government, including the judiciary. It therefore reinforces our founding principles.
Justice Frankfurter said the treatment of the accused within our justice system demonstrates our commitment to upholding the rights and procedures outlined in the Bill of Rights. Our jury system allows the average American to take an active part in the criminal justice system while we uphold procedural due process rights for all Americans.
Thank you. We are now ready for your questions.
Thank you. Let me start off by asking you about jury nullification. Good, bad, a little bad. Where do you come down on it and why?
I personally think that jury nullification is something that is healthy for our democracy and our judicial system because it allows the people to really have a say in a part of the democracy that they usually don't get a say in, because the judicial branch is the one branch that is centered around the Constitution and the legality of things rather than what the people want and who the people have elected. Judges are not elected by the people the same way that congressmen and people of the executive, the president, sorry, are. And thus, it creates this sort of way for people to express their morals and their views within the judicial system and the justice system as a whole.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, especially throughout the course of history, how we have used that jury nullification. During the Prohibition era, a lot of prohibition-related cases that were actually the jury used jury nullification in order to not convict these defendants because they thought that prohibition, the 18th Amendment, was a dumb thing, and they thought that no one should go to jail because of this. So I think that even though it's kind of frivolous in nature when we look back at the course of history, I think that it's really indicative of how powerful the people can be, and that is a very core of American democracy.
Is that the core of American democracy? I mean, isn't the solution to the 18th Amendment being dumb the 21st Amendment? Like, isn't that the solution? Not a jury taking it upon themselves, or even a single juror taking upon him or herself?
I think until the 21st Amendment, this brought it down to a more individualistic scale. So in seeing a defendant possibly having to go to jail for this amendment that the American people collectively didn't believe in, I think that at an individual level, it took that, it had that democratic view. But I think that until the 21st Amendment happened,
But Naya, do you agree with your two colleagues that nullification is a good thing?
I do agree with my colleagues. I believe that I want to emphasize what Adrish said about the separation of the judicial branch. When I spoke to Associate Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy, he mentioned something very special. The executive branch and the legislative branch, the constituents of them are the people. However, the constituents of the judicial branch is the Constitution. Allowing jurors to have that say, being a part of the judicial branch, and allowing the citizens to have an active part in that.
But that's a really idealized view. How do you stop someone from saying, I don't care, the judge said I'm not supposed to consider the defendant's color when I decide whether he's guilty or innocent, but all people that color are crooks, and so I'm going to convict regardless of, even though the judge said I should only decide based on the evidence. Isn't that, I mean, that's jury nullification. Surely you're not in favor of that. How do you prevent that if you're going to be sort of say how great nullification is?
Yeah, I think that there's a very preventative measure that we already have, and is the voir dire process. As we said in our speech, the very core of the Sixth Amendment is having an impartial jury. So I think that voir dire process, vetting these potential jurors to make sure that there isn't any implicit bias that they have, is a very preventative measure and one of the best that we have in order to ensure that this bad sort of type side of jury nullification.
So once a juror makes their way through voir dire and gets onto the jury, your position is they can then do what they want.
I agree with Ella, and I also think that preemptive challenges serve as a very important measure during the judicial process to remove certain members of the jury. But I do agree with you. I think that is a big issue that we do see in our jury process, and that's why representation is so incredibly important. Having those members on a jury that represent the community members that are involved in the trial, I personally believe is extremely important. We recently saw in the Ahmaud Arbery trial that the town in which the trial took place was 50% Black, but only 3 members of the jury were in fact Black. And in a society where 1 in 3 Black male babies will be prosecuted at some point in their life, that is a statistic that becomes essential. And I think that is where representation becomes so important. And in order to kind of vet that issue, we do need some other jurors that do represent other members of the community and emphasize that Magna Carta idea of a jury of your peers.
Let me jump in at this point and ask you, regarding the peremptory challenges that you mentioned just shortly, is that a good process for jury selection during voir dire, or should we change it? Should it continue?
I disagree with Naya on the fact that the peremptory jury challenge is a positive thing for the jury system because it is often used to target people of a similar ethnic group or a similar minority group to the defendant at hand. And because of this, I think that we can look to the Arizona Supreme Court, which has recently, as of 2022, banned peremptory jury challenges in order to better be representative and indicative of the specific community in which a case is taking place, because that's really what the jury system is supposed to be. It's supposed to be representative. And if we're not representing this cross-section of community that the jury system is supposed to be, we're betraying what it represents to the American judicial system. And we are not doing the defendant, we're not giving the defendant proper justice and due process.
I wholeheartedly agree with the jury. I think we can also look to the recent Kyle Rittenhouse trial when we look at preemptive challenges, where the defense was granted 24 peremptory challenges. However, the prosecution was only granted 12. So I think that especially the disparity in disparity of these sort of challenges that we can use to discriminate against races, honestly, is what it was used for. I think that is how it was this idea that was sort of rooted. It had laudable roots. However, it was twisted. And I think that at the very core is having this representative jury.
So are there any positives to peremptory challenges? It sounds like a whole lot of reasons not to have them, but why do 49 states still use them?
I think at the very core, preemptive challenges do come back to that point that we were making earlier, where we do need that second process in order to kind of ensure that there is no biases happening in the jury pool. When it does come down to it, the voir dire process is not perfect. It really is not. And therefore, having preemptive challenges really is kind of that second solution where it goes through the filter, but then we've got that second filter to catch the remains.
I think in a kind of addition to what Naya said, I think the way that we should be sort of taking it is to have the judge and the people involved with the trial have to give reasoning behind why they're removing people from the jury. And the reasoning is the most key part to this, because if they are going to be removing somebody because they think they may have some sort of bias, then that is a completely valid reason to challenge that juror. However, because of the nature of preemptory jury challenges and because of the fact that they don't really need to explain why they have actually removed this juror, that's sort of the issue with them when it comes to the judicial system right now. With some amendments and with some changes to this process, maybe this would be actually very helpful for the jury process and very helpful for the justice system overall.
So would you apply any of these lessons to civil cases? I mean, we're pretty much talking criminal, but do you think that these also apply in civil cases, that the positions you've taken?
I would absolutely agree. And I think that we can, even James Madison said that the trial by jury in civil cases is so important. So I think that all of these jury peremptory challenges, or voir dire process rather, I think that is essential in civil cases as well in order to produce accurate results and to really ensure due process of the law.
I absolutely agree with Ella. As we saw in Dairy Queen Incorporated versus Wood, if a jury is requested in a timely and appropriate manner, I personally believe that it must be provided regardless of whether it is a criminal or civil trial.
If I may jump on what Judge Levy just asked, do you think civil jury trials should have unanimous decisions as well?
I think when it comes to the unanimity of anything, I think unanimity is vital to keeping discrimination out of our justice system, whether that be in civil or criminal cases. When the non-unanimous jury trial was adopted for criminal cases in Louisiana in specific, it was adopted at an 1898 Constitutional Convention, in which they stated that the purpose of the convention was to establish the supremacy of the white race. Thus, this calls into question whether the non-unanimous jury conviction process for whether it be civil or criminal cases should actually be upheld, because it is founded in the modern era under such bigotry and discrimination.
I think an also very interesting point that Justice Harry Blackmun said in Valley versus Georgia is that small juries have a higher statistic for getting inaccurate results. And in civil cases, you don't have to have 12 member juries, because 12 member juries are really used for serious criminal offenses. So I think that in order to provide the most accurate results, as Justice Harry Blackmun said, I think that we need the requisite of unanimity in order to provide accurate results.
In your presentation, you talked about unanimity in the criminal context as necessary because of the reasonable doubt standard. But when you're using a preponderance of the evidence or other lesser standard, why is unanimity unanimity required in the civil context?
I believe that unanimity is still necessary because although we do not see this beyond a reasonable doubt standard, it does become, do you mind if I finish my thought?
You can finish your thought.
Thank you. It does become important that we have this idea that that somebody is not being convicted simply because there is some level of reasoning for why they would not be guilty. And I think it's really put very well in 12 Angry Men. Imagine if you were on the stand. Would you want any ounce of doubt in the minds of the juries that you committed the crime? No. And I think that is the answer to that question.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. Here, let me look for the appropriate emoji here. Thunderous applause. You'll have to pretend that is, because that's what you deserve. So let us give you a little bit of feedback. Wow, wow, you guys are tough, man. I mean, we kept sort of lobbing these grenades at you, and you kept lobbing them back. So, which is really impressive. You present so well. You're thoughtful. You're earnest. You're really, boy. If I tell you, if I'm ever accused of something, I think I might hire the three of you to be my defense lawyers. So it's I mean, seriously, you really.